For over a decade, Castlevania fans have been asking the same question. Where has this franchise been? Every PlayStation showcase, every Nintendo Direct, every Summer Game Fest, there was always that little bit of hope. Maybe this time. Maybe we'd finally hear those familiar bells, see Dracula's castle appear through the fog, or hear that iconic music one more time. Instead, nothing. While Castlevania disappeared, the genre it helped create kept getting bigger. Hollow Knight pushed exploration to another level. Ori showed just how beautiful a metroidvania could be. Blasphemous embraced the dark gothic atmosphere, and Dead Cells proved that fast-paced 2D combat could still feel incredible. Ironically, while everyone else was building on Castlevania's foundation, Castlevania itself was nowhere to be found. Then, after years of silence, Konami finally opened the castle gates again. And honestly, I don't think anyone is more excited, or more nervous, than the people who grew up playing Symphony of the Night. Because following one of the greatest games ever made isn't just difficult, it's almost unfair. Symphony of the Night didn't just become another classic, it helped define an entire genre. That's why Belmont's Curse isn't just launching with excitement, it's launching with expectations that would crush most games before they're even released. So today, let's look at everything we know so far, and whether Konami finally has what it takes to bring Castlevania back where it belongs. The first thing that immediately stands out is that Konami isn't playing it safe. Instead of simply remaking an older game, or giving us another nostalgia trip, Belmont's Curse looks like it's trying to move the series forward. The story takes us to medieval Paris, where Dracula's influence is once again spreading across the city. Although, at this point, I'm honestly convinced Dracula has some kind of resurrection membership. Seriously, how many times can one vampire come back before someone changes the locks on his castle? But this time, the journey looks very different. Instead of marching directly toward Dracula's castle, players will first explore a huge, interconnected world. Ancient cathedrals, dark city streets, forgotten tunnels, hidden passages, ruined districts. Every location feels like another piece of a much bigger mystery. And honestly, I think that's exactly what Castlevania needed, because the best moments in Symphony of the Night weren't always the boss fights. Sometimes, they were those moments where you found a hidden hallway, unlocked a completely optional room, or stumbled across an item you weren't supposed to discover until much later. That's the magic Konami seems to understand this time. Exploration isn't there simply to make the map bigger, it's there to reward curiosity. The developers have already confirmed that progression plays a much bigger role than before. As you gain new abilities, areas that once looked impossible suddenly become accessible. That suspicious ledge you couldn't reach, that locked doorway you walked past an hour ago, that hidden corridor tucked behind a cracked wall, they all become invitations to come back. If you're a longtime Metroidvania fan, you already know exactly what's about to happen. You'll tell yourself, I'll check that room later, and 20 minutes after unlocking a new ability, you'll completely ignore the main objective, just to see what was hiding there. We've all done it. And honestly, that's exactly why these games are so addictive. Now, if Konami really wants to make longtime fans lose their minds, just hide another upside-down castle somewhere. I'm not saying they have to, I'm just saying it would instantly become one of the greatest callbacks in gaming history. Of course, none of this matters if the gameplay doesn't feel right. Because let's be honest, you can have the perfect atmosphere, the best soundtrack, the coolest bosses, but if swinging that whip doesn't feel satisfying, fans will notice immediately. Thankfully, from everything we've seen so far, Belmont's Curse looks incredibly promising. The legendary vampire killer whip returns, but this time, it's much more than just a weapon. You'll use it to swing across massive gaps, reach hidden ledges, interact with the environment, solve puzzles, and even discover areas that would have been impossible to reach before. It's exactly the kind of evolution I'd hope to see. Not changing Castlevania, expanding it, and that's where Evil Empire enters the picture. Now, I'll be honest, I'm not really a fan of roguelikes. So Dead Cells was never one of those games I poured hundreds of hours into. But even I have to admit, that game feels incredible. Every attack, every dodge, every jump, everything is responsive. Everything flows. It has that feeling where your character becomes an extension of your hands. And if there's one thing Evil Empire absolutely understands, it's how to make 2D combat feel satisfying. If they can bring that same level of polish, without losing Castlevania's identity, we could genuinely be looking at something special. Because fans aren't asking for Castlevania to become Dead Cells. They're asking for Castlevania to feel as incredible today as Symphony of the Night did back in 1997.
No one believed me when I said we knew it was the Belmont.
But here's something I think a lot of people forget. When Koji Igarashi left Konami back in 2014, he didn't stop making Castlevania-style games. Instead, he created Bloodstained, Ritual of the Night, and for years, that became the game fans recommended whenever someone asked, what's the closest thing to a modern Symphony of the Night? Bloodstained wasn't called Castlevania, But in many ways, it carried the torch while the real franchise remained silent. Which brings us back to Belmont's Curse. For the first time in over a decade, Konami isn't competing against other Metroidvanias. They're competing against the expectations created by Symphony of the Night, and the legacy that Bloodstained managed to keep alive. That's a huge challenge because fans already know this formula still works. Bloodstained proved that years ago. Now it's Konami's turn to prove that Castlevania itself still has that magic. And honestly, I think that's why this game feels different. Not because of the graphics, not because of the new setting, not even because of the gameplay. It's because Belmont's Curse has something to prove. If this game succeeds, it tells Konami that Castlevania still belongs among the best Metroidvanias ever made. It opens the door for future games, new stories, maybe even remakes of some of the classics fans have been asking for. But if it falls short, who's to say how long we'll have to wait before another mainline Castlevania? And Konami isn't just trying to win back longtime fans anymore. Millions of people were introduced to Castlevania through the Netflix series. For some of them, this will be their very first game in the franchise. So Belmont's Curse has to satisfy two completely different audiences. The veterans, who expect the magic of Symphony of the Night, and newcomers, who simply want an incredible action-adventure game. That's not an easy balancing act. But if Konami gets it right, Belmont's Curse won't just be remembered as another sequel. It'll be remembered as the game that finally brought Castlevania back from the dead. And honestly, considering Dracula has made a career out of coming back, maybe it's only fair that Castlevania gets one more resurrection too. So, after more than a decade of waiting, while Konami hasn't shared every last detail yet, one thing is clear: the wait is finally coming to an end. Whether you're playing on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series XS, Nintendo Switch, or PC, Konami is making sure that almost everyone gets to experience Castlevania's return on day one. And honestly, I think that's the right decision. If you're bringing back one of gaming's most iconic franchises, you don't lock it behind a single platform. You let as many people as possible experience it. Longtime fans, newcomers, people who discovered Castlevania through Netflix, and players who have never touched a Metroidvania before. Everyone gets a chance to step inside Dracula's world. Multiple editions have also been announced, giving collectors and longtime fans a few different ways to celebrate the franchise's return. But here's the thing: none of that is what will determine whether Belmont's Curse succeeds. Not the collector's edition, not the platform it's on, not even how many copies it sells in the first week. The real test is something much harder. When the credits roll, will people be talking about Belmont's Curse? Or will they still be talking about Symphony of the Night? Because that's the shadow this game has been living under since the day it was announced. And maybe that's a good thing. Great franchises shouldn't chase the past. They should learn from it, respect it, and build something worthy of standing beside it. From everything we've seen so far, I genuinely believe Konami understands that. They're not trying to replace Symphony of the Night. They're trying to remind us why we fell in love with Castlevania in the first place. The gothic atmosphere, the unforgettable music, the sense of discovery around every corner, the satisfaction of finding a hidden path that completely changes your journey. That's what made Castlevania special. Not just Dracula, not just the Belmonts, but the feeling that every room might hold something incredible if you were curious enough to look. If Belmont's Curse can capture that feeling again, then this won't just be another sequel. It'll be the beginning of a brand new chapter for one of gaming's greatest franchises. And honestly, I hope it succeeds, because after waiting this long, Castlevania deserves its comeback. So now I want to hear from you. Do you think Belmont's Curse has what it takes to stand alongside Symphony of the Night? Or do you think that's simply too high a bar for any game to reach? And here's another question. Would you rather Konami continue making brand new Castlevania games? Or would you rather see remakes of classics like Symphony of the Night, Aria of Sorrow, or Lament of Innocence? Let me know down in the comments. I read every single one, and I genuinely love to hear what you think. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to Xord Reviews, and share this video with a fellow Castlevania fan. Every like, every share, and every new subscriber helps us create bigger, better, and higher quality videos for this community. There are some incredible games on the horizon, and trust me, we're going to cover every single one of them. Until next time,